Hello, my name is Sheena with Rise Wellness, and this is Activate Your Genius. This week I am exploring Gene Key 29 from Richard Rudd's book, The Gene Keys. This is the shadow of half-heartedness. This is the gift of commitment, and this is the Siddhi or the highest destiny path of devotion. So if you joined me last week, we discussed the programming partner to this gene, which was Gene Key 30 and the shadow of desire. So what we learned about the shadow of desire is it's part of our genetic makeup. It is part of our yearning to go through life's experiences in order for us to evolve. And in most cases, it's actually our shadow of desire that might lead us to our eventual demise more than it is to our growth. But in the collective, it's just as important to learn from either. Richard Rudd will call this pairing of these two cells, the programming partner, the 29th and the 30th gene, quite possibly the greatest emotional chaos of any two of the shadow pairings. And that feels pretty aligned with how I received this gene during this week. So both genes are part of our vital life force energy that's within us. It ultimately leads us to either overcommit to things or undercommit to things and have a lack of commitment. There's really nothing worth doing in life unless you're 100% committed and into it from the start. If you're lacking anything other than that 100%, you might as well not even get started because it's simply not enough, as we come to find out with this gene. Without commitment, action lacks a direction. It lacks a purpose. It therefore lacks luck. When we think about commitment and putting our actions into something, there's actually a universal law around it that carries the seed of good fortune. When we are truly invested and have trust in what we're doing, and we'll therefore have the opposite outcome, and we can plant the seed of bad luck if we don't have that full commitment into the process. Not committing to something truly is just not having enough trust in it, not having the capacity to believe in ourselves and our ability to make the right decisions for ourselves. It's like all of our shadows are deeply rooted in our fear and our mistrust or our distrust in the universe. So when you enter the shadow of half-heartedness, you really become a victim of fate. Rather than playing the roles that you were born to step into, you're kind of like playing on the sidelines. You're kind of just taking what life gives you and not being an active participant in your life. You might end up playing small or, playing roles that you weren't really intended to play and maybe much longer that you were intended to play them. You will eventually lead a really dull and monotonous life if you stay on this fear frequency. Basically, you're allowing misery a seat at your table when you live this half-heartedly. So this gene is all about our human feelings. It's about sex and it's about relating. It's about success and it's about failure. It's about desire and it's about expectation. So if you haven't watched my gene on desire and the programming partner, I definitely encourage you to do that at some point during your contemplation of this gene, because like with all programming partners, you'll really get a sense of how they work together to complement with one another. So when we go into something half-heartedly, we're literally being dishonest with not only ourselves, but with others and with life, because we are not sure about what we're doing. Like I said before, we don't trust ourselves, and therefore we lead ourselves to some pretty unpleasant consequences. So this shadow for many of us is a real wake-up call. Our commitments, they operate in cycles, and at the end of each cycle, our cycles will either renew themselves or they'll come to a completion and they'll go ahead and commit to something else. So many of us will know that our cellular cycle lasts 7 years. This is how long it takes the body to replace all of our renewable cells. So therefore, true commitment will actually lead 7 years or more, or last 7 years or more. Cycles of desire will usually be far less time than this. And what's really important for us to realize is that we have to follow through these desires till the natural completion. If we stick it out, we know that the cycle has come to a completion and we move on from it. If we don't, that's when we end up breaking out of a cycle prematurely, and then our life will end up constructing the same pattern or the same experience over and over and over again. So really, half-heartedness then is about giving up at the first signs of trouble. It's, something minor goes wrong in your business plan while you're getting things off the ground, or in your relationship, or, in anything, there's the first sign of trouble and you just cave. You have that fear that it's all going to collapse on you and you just quit. You quit. So that is what makes so many of us fall into these repeating patterns, because we give up too quickly. Richard Rudd will say in his contemplation, he bravely puts his truth out there that says most of us will break up with our partners much too soon. And, he recognizes that that might be a risky thing to say, but it's true. I think a lot of us live in this world of immediate gratification, and we feel like if this person doesn't check off all of the boxes all of the time, there's somebody else out there that will. And so you just give up. You just, you quit it, you abandon it. And what ends up happening most times is that cycle hadn't naturally gone through its completed natural process of coming to its end, and you eventually go out into a new relationship and find the same behaviors or the same things that you left from the last one in the new relationship. And the reason that you're having that experience is because you were half-hearted. You pulled out too soon. You got scared and you didn't follow it to the natural completion. You didn't learn the lesson from it. So the lesson, like the law of the universe, has to come back around until you actually learn from it. So one of the disclaimers that he mentions that I should mention is that, if you are in a relationship with someone who's abusive, then, that's a deal breaker. You really got to look out for yourself and your well-being and your safety first and foremost. But if you're having some hiccups with your partner, instead of jumping ship, talk them out. We'll get to it later on, but sometimes these are the breakthroughs that really help us connect with someone. So instead of just giving up too quick, this might be the time to put more effort in. So if you keep finding yourselves making the same mistakes, ending up in these repeating patterns, you feel like you're dating the same person over and over and over again, or making the same business decision that leads to this failure over and over and over again, it's time for you to really step back and notice what you are or you are not doing, because there is a reason these repeating patterns are coming back around for you to learn from. So what's kind of interesting about this gene is in the I Ching, the I Ching hexagram for this has a name or an archetype, which is called the abysmal. So we think of the abyss as this deep, dark, bottomless pit, and we think of the abysmal as something awful, something terrible. So this archetype of the abysmal is this major symbol for predicting danger in life, and that's really where it stemmed from. And life is going to send you on this roller coaster to really test your commitment, and it's the power of your commitment that's going to lead you through the abyss. So that's kind of interesting. So half-heartedness keeps having you question whether or not you've made the right decision. So if you start to feel this fear creeping in, it's going to start to undermine that commitment that you have. You're starting to have doubts about whether or not you've made the right choices, and you have the option of either going through this in a half-hearted way, or committing even deeper into it to learn from it and to transcend those fears and those doubts to a higher frequency. So this is really the secret to success then, is the commitment to your luck, to your cycle, to your decision making, to your heart, to your devotion. If you can weather your doubt, then you can transcend that doubt. Failure simply means that you have remained stuck in an old cycle and you're not learning from it. You're not growing from it, and that's why we're seeing this most often in our human relationships. So many of our issues with commitment have a social morality around it, and that is the thing about the Gene Keys that I thought that was a really interesting takeaway, is that the social morality, it doesn't really make any sense. It's not practical, because the commitment that we have, it's life energy. It doesn't need to be judged. It shouldn't be judged. So when we go into these marriages and sacred unions with this social morality or expectation around it, that's when we start to feel like if a marriage comes to an end, that it's a failure. But that's just a really harsh way for us to judge our human emotions, is to call the end of a relationship a failure. It doesn't really serve us, because it's a life force energy. It's not a social morality. That's just the context that we've been putting into these things. And I think that's why we get off on the wrong foot with a lot of marriages from the beginning, because we have this social pressure to get married, to do the things, to have the 2.5 children and the picket fence and the cul-de-sac house and all of these things. We have this social expectation around doing these things, but if they don't align with us, they just simply don't align with us. So it's not practical to judge our relationships as a success, or most likely, more than anything, a failure if they don't work. They simply reached the end of their cycle. So if you are married or in a spiritual union with someone and a desire rears its ugly head, there are two directions for that desire to go. You either learn that because you have a desire for someone outside of your union, that this cycle has now come to the end of its cycle, its natural rhythm, or it is your relationship is about to be strengthened because you're going to grapple with some really hard topics to communicate what this desire is and lead to a breakthrough that has the potential to really strengthen the union. That's why in some cases, and I'm not for cheating whatsoever, but that's why sometimes you hear those stories about married couples or couples who go through someone has an affair and they decide that they're going to work it out, and they end up coming back and having the most fantastic marriage that they've had, since the beginning. Is they had to have the really difficult conversations about why that desire was rearing its ugly head, and having to add this new level of trust and forgiveness into the relationship that maybe was never there. And maybe by embarking on that journey of healing after the affair, maybe that's why those conversations helped to fuel the marriage. So just something that came up in my contemplation to think about. There's certainly other cases that, when someone is unfaithful, that's a clear indicator that that cycle is over. It is time to move on. But, it's not always the case. And so I agree with Richard Rudd when he says that sometimes we get our feelings hurt and we go through these really hard things in relationships, and our initial reaction is to withdraw, pull away, abort mission, find someone new. But if we never get to the root of why that person had the affair, or what disconnection was happening in the marriage, or what conversations were not happening, then you're more likely to get back into a new relationship and experience the same kind of traumas again. When we talked about desire, a lot of it is just we have this yearning to experience all of these things. And the reason that we have this yearning to experience them is because this is how we learn. This is how we learn about ourselves. This is how we learn how to stay and keep our heart open through life. And this is how we grow and evolve in our relationships and how we relate to others. So when we jump ship really prematurely over the first, argument or bouts of conflict with our partner, they're surely not going to go away. They haven't reached the end of their cycle, and they're more likely to come in by way of something or someone else. It may not repeat in the same way, but if the lesson has not been learned, the universe is going to keep giving you the lesson. So the saying for this shadow is, a life lived in fear is a life half lived. So to live half-hearted really then means that you never fully embrace or trust the decisions that you're making. You're constantly worried about where every decision will lead you. So this gift frequency that you start to step into with more contemplation and intention is about not holding anything back. It's about allowing life to catapult you into the abyss, into the unknown. And if you do, you enter the flow and you start to see all the rewards waiting for you on the other side. So in a repressive nature, these are the people that overcommit. So these people are so afraid to say no, they say yes to everything, and they keep their commitments despite what's happening. They keep them much longer than they should, and they usually take on far more than they're capable of handling, and they eventually get really burnt out. They get exhausted by the magnitude of their commitments, and they really are operating from a fear frequency because they don't have the courage to admit that the cycle's over, or they need to step up for themselves. They need to step into their power. They're not going to allow others to abuse them anymore, consciously or unconsciously. So I think about work with this one a lot. I know that was something that I was really guilty of at one point in my career, is overcommitting and just being like, yes, I will do that for sure. I will do that. Yes, I will take on 17 more projects while I have 56 that I'm working on with a deadline of Friday. Yes, I will work 80 hours in a week and all good in the hood. Just overcommitting because I felt like that was making me come across as a better leader, a more essential worker, whatever. But really that overcommitting was not following my true desire of having a work-life balance and prioritizing the things that were important to me. And it all came from a fear of saying no. It came from a people-pleasing place where I was afraid to disappoint people. So this overcommitting and a repressive nature is usually coming from someone that's just afraid of other people's expectations and letting them down. So on the reactive nature, these people are unreliable. So these people actually have a deep fear of commitment, and they rarely follow through on any action or cycle with confidence and competence. They say yes to everything, and they react to the pressure of pulling out of their commitments. So they're actually holding on to this anger because they have this fear of other people's expectations on them. So in the repressive nature, you're saying yes to everything and you're actually completing all of it all, but you're burning yourself out. And the reactive nature, you say yes to everything, but then you don't actually fulfill any of it. And in a lot of cases, these people actually never even start anything. So they might have this amazing vision of this business they want to grow, and they can see, the products that they're going to have and the services that they're going to render, but they're so afraid of failure that they don't even get started. So the reactive nature is stemming from this reactive anger, and so by saying yes to everyone, they actually end up disappointing everyone because they don't follow through with anything. Sometimes we see this in relationships where, you have one person that never wants to settle down. They never want to commit fully to one person because, as always, this is stemmed from a fear place. They're just simply afraid that they're committing to the wrong person. They're afraid that they're making the wrong decision for their heart. So once we raise that frequency up, we come to the 29th gift, and this is the gift of commitment. So as your frequency becomes clearer, you actually start making a lot better decisions for yourself. You have a lot more trust in the decisions that you're making, and you fall into the flow. You're no longer worried about all the expectations of everyone around you, the judgments of everyone. You don't really care about what other people think. You just stay committed to your own value system. You don't get in the way of life anymore. You kind of just fall into the flow now, and you allow your life to just be taken in all these really interesting and powerful directions. That energy, because this is life force energy, flows into you in an emotional and sexual way. You simply trust, so much so that you're not worried about what happens in the future. You're not worried about the end goal because you're allowing yourself to commit so fully onto the journey that you're on until the very end. To live your truth with this profound level of commitment means that you've never made a single decision without that same level of commitment. It doesn't matter what you're committing to, whether it's how you make love to your partner or how you do the dishes. You have that same level of commitment in every single facet of your life. So right now, I always go back to the 55th gene because in that video, I talk a lot about the human evolution that we are about to experience and starting to experience. And the 29th gene is part of this genetic mutation that's happening in our DNA. And this gene makes up the codon ring of unity. And it's directly responsible for the way that humans relate to one another. And the way that we're seeing these mutations occur right now is particularly by way of our sexuality and our gender. So the role of human sexuality is getting ready to go through this big change. And right now, it's leading us to be really confused while it's all happening. And we're starting to see more people questioning the institution of marriage itself, which is like a really age-old tradition that doesn't align with a lot of people anymore. And some of the principles around commitment are starting to look a lot different. And because you have that, you have a lot of societal expectations that are changing around this, and some judgments are coming up. And what this commitment we learn is, it's not about I'm committed to you, therefore I have to take this, go through this act of matrimony with you. It's really like saying I'm committed to you, therefore every day I am making that hell yes choice to be with you and remain committed to this relationship. We don't have to go through this this age-old tradition of getting married in order to feel that commitment for one another. So this commitment has less to do with social expectations and a lot more to do with really just saying hell yes to all your decisions in life. The only real commitment then is your commitment to your inner guidance system as your navigator. So this gift really then is all about surrendering into this here and now moment and honoring and trusting in nature's natural rhythms and cycles. That I'm going to say hell yes to you right now in this now moment. And with that deep surrender comes this trust that maybe this plays out for a week, a month, a year, a lifetime. And I'm okay with in all of those scenarios. I'm so fully committed in keeping my heart open that I'm going to learn from this experience, no matter how long it lasts. And I'm going to really enjoy the experience while I'm having it. So true commitment is this energetic dynamic that is felt in your whole being. It's not a social requirement. It's not moralistic. It lasts as long as it lasts. And anyone who begins a relationship on this footing is setting themselves up to have a clear beginning and end that doesn't get all turbulent and emotional. If you meet a new partner and things are going great and then one day they don't, you can peacefully say, you know what, this isn't aligning anymore. I wish you the best of luck, onwards and upwards. And that's it. You don't have to have all this attachment to it. I think about this commitment. The foundation of this commitment is the commitment to non-attachment. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people struggle with is they feel like a commitment needs attachment. And a true commitment is all about a surrender. And surrender means a commitment to the non-attachment. I will be with you as long as this cycle is naturally processing for us. When it comes to its completion, we will part ways and we'll be better people for having shared this experience together. So people that have this gene as a prevalent one in their hologenetic profile, or if you just feel really connected with this gene in its higher frequencies, if you're manifesting this gift, you're likely to be a very lucky person because you live pretty open-hearted. You have a clear decision-making process. You trust your decisions, and all of that means that you're setting the intention and you're planting the seed of good fortune in every direction that you move through life with. You're allowing yourself to make your decisions from your heart center. So, as I said before, commitment means to surrender. Rather than expending a whole bunch of energy maintaining a commitment, you do the opposite. You surrender to it. If you feel a lack of commitment, it's because you probably need to surrender even deeper into the experience. And, instead of clinging tighter, holding on, gripping fiercely, you need to let go more and allow your heart to lead the way, really. So, when it comes to businesses, especially starting your own business, and any business, you are going to have a lot of ups and downs. It's a long journey, and it is a scary journey sometimes. But even though it might be full of ups and downs, as long as you stay committed to your decision-making abilities, then when one door closes, you might find down the road that door actually led you to an opportunity that you didn't have the foresight to see right away. So just keep leading with your heart. The programming partner of this gene is lightness. So all of this is about operating from your higher frequencies, moving through your heart, and just entering the flow and just trusting. I actually had a situation myself come up this week where I was invited to do a spiritual retreat in Costa Rica. And I can't even tell you how long I've been manifesting a spiritual retreat in Costa Rica. And I do have one scheduled for November, but this was in addition to that. And I was so excited at the beginning of this. And then as I started looking at the pros and cons and going through this journey this week on this Gene Key passage and contemplating the pros and cons, the value and the cost of this trip, it went from being I would love to do this to I don't think this is the right scenario for my business and my vision. And having that business meeting to say no started off really difficult for me, just because I was fearful of turning down something and wondering if I was coming from a scarcity mindset with it, and I was being half-hearted about it. And then after we talked it all out and decided, you know what, this isn't a hell yes for any of us, we went back to the drawing board and we started recreating a new way to make all of our visions come true. So this journey this week has just been that reminder that if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. It has to be a no. So the 29th Siddhi, this is the highest destiny path of devotion. So when your level of commitment takes on this universal level of functioning, it becomes transmuted into the Siddhi of devotion. And when we think about the Siddhi of devotion, this is where the path of bhakti yoga comes from. This bhakti yoga is known in the East as this higher path of consciousness. It's the path of devotion. It's the path of the heart. It's been called love for love's sake, and it's considered a union through love and devotion. It can lead you to the path of self-realization and of having the experience of oneness with everything around you. It's a really beautiful process. Devotional paths are all about paths of self-surrender, and they lead you to completely lose your own sense of self in another. Now, the other can be a mission, like we hear about, like Mother Teresa's mission in feeding the poor. That was her devotion. That was her passion project. Well, this can also be an ideal or a symbol, such as a god or a guru. The path of devotion is far removed from society, and this is because devotion is a commitment gone mad. And it's gone mad because there is no logic and reasoning behind it. It completely abolishes thoughts of the mind to operate solely from the heart. And we're not always used to seeing that and see people exhibiting that. So when you see someone exhibiting these passion projects and these devotion to worship, or, to religion, to their God, to something, it starts to, you just see it. It's a magnetic quality. It's found in their Buddhic field. And I think about this when it comes to parent relationships too. There are sometimes when a mother becomes so devoted to her children that she doesn't even see herself as a separate entity anymore, or everything is all consuming of her children. And this is someone that is devoted to that role of a mother, devoted to those children. So it's kind of mad sometimes to think about leaving the thoughts in your head to follow the wildness of your heart. But that's the Siddhi. That's the highest destiny path of this gene, is the wildness of your heart. So at the gift level, commitment can still have traces of selfishness in it, because there's still something self-fulfilling about your commitment to another. But when you find yourself directly committed to the service of others, that self-seeking nature just kind of disappears. Your higher cause is all about being devoted to another person or to another project. People approaching this Siddhi can appear to worship a god, a guru, or a project without any care for themselves. Again, thinking of motherhood. To the devoted one, the only thing that exists in the universe is the thing that they're devoted to. And they start to see that guru everywhere, in everything. I was trying to think of an example of, I guess I would see, in my experience, I see the God in people. I see the God in everything. When you just have all those miracles happening in your life, and you have to just say, like, oh my gosh, this is another God moment. This is, I am experiencing and witnessing a higher consciousness that just allows me to feel the rapture of devotion, and that's another thing about these programming partner is devotion and rapture are so like you can't have one or the other. They are the same. They become part of the same experience. So so if your devotion is towards a project, that's your single focus, and everything that matters in your life is going to lead you on that single direction and on that path. And if you did see my video last week, I was talking about a beach cleanup event that I went to, and there was a speaker there that was talking about his life's work in, this commitment to cleaning up marine debris. And he ended up on this, couple 1,000-mile trek cleaning up all of the beaches along the coast of Florida. It was such a passion project, and his speech was so full of rapture because he was so devoted in his mission. And that mission had inspired all of these other people to gravitate toward him into this project. And that's how these cities work, is they just manifest all these people operating from a similar frequency that become so enraptured and devoted to these projects. So when the quantum leap into this Siddhic state actually occurs within you, something extraordinary happens, and all the love that you've poured into that God, that project, that deity, that whatever, it starts to be poured back into you. You feel it back in you, and you would start to see everything and everyone around you, including yourself, as the beloved. And the dilemma of this highest destiny path is you become the devoted, you become the guru, you become the God. So you no longer have something to worship because you recognize your oneness with all of it. So this thing that you've been regularly worshiping, now you're so operating in the same frequency with, that it just becomes the overwhelm of this city is, well, now who do you pray to if you are the God, And I know that can sound really kind of bizarre to some people if they think that they are the highest power, I don't know. I think it's confusing to talk about. I do still believe in a higher power. I also do believe I came from that higher power and I have access to it within me. I will always continue to pray to a higher power, though, as being something that derived from this master creator. But I can also understand how someone can stop praying altogether out in nature. An atheist can be out in nature experiencing God everywhere, and there's no reason to bow down and pray to him because he's just experiencing him or it in all of its magnificence of the nature around it. So it's kind of just interesting. So it's so funny that at this point your hearts go into such a constant meltdown by everyone and everything around you that we would often say with these people that they are divine drunks, or more commonly in our society we would say they're sipping the Kool-Aid. They might become great poets. Whatever they are, they're just on this passion project. They're just working in this single direction way to offer this service or this worship toward the thing that they're devoted to. And one of the things that I was thinking about when it comes to this is because of that overwhelm, that constant meltdown that our hearts are in. I think about those videos that I've seen online on social media where like a little child is holding their newborn sibling for the first time, and they just can't help but weep. And this is this little child, and I firmly believe that our children are so close to God. They're so connected with God. And as they develop more and more programming from society, they start to lose that connection unless they're living with deeply conscious parents that keep it at the foundation of life. But when they are so young and they have all these higher consciousness moments, simply witnessing new life and seeing their soul in that soul and just experiencing that family member coming into their life will break them down into tears. It's a heart meltdown. It's an overflowing love, connecting to this little person. It's so beautiful to see. So, as I said before, devotion and rapture, they're inseparable. These people that are experiencing these siddhis are seized by love. The aura of such a being is so soft that you can draw almost anyone in as a devotee. So when you're meeting someone that is operating from this frequency in the flesh, it's kind of impossible to say no to them. And that's why I think it can be impossible to say no to our children and to our pets, because they just give you this look and you're just like, I'm just melting. You're so special. You're so sweet. So another aspect that's partially born out of this Siddhi or highest destiny path of devotion is the path of Tantra. And I know Tantra might have this connotation around sex, and it's because it's still very much part of our sexual life force energy. So that absolutely is a powerful direction that Tantra can go into. But Tantra is also about the transmutation of sexual or desire frequency into divine energy. It's when you begin to realize that your life is flowing through you, you start to see this energy as something outside of your body. It's actually coming in through your Buddhic body, your fifth body, and flowing through all of your cells, through all of your life. So it's kind of been, you're like in this Tantra stream, and this life force energy flows through you. And in some cases with Tantra, in some Tantra practices, they might have somebody picture being physically intimate with their deity and holding that feeling and those sensations, and it can keep them in these orgasmic feelings for like 24 hours. It's really powerful life force energy that a lot of us are really repressed with. When we think about sexual energy, this is all coming from our sacral chakra. We have to recognize that sexual energy is also our creativity. This life force energy has these different directions that can go in. So there are a lot of people that say that they're not creative when they're so creative. There's no limit to the artistic ability that they have, but somewhere along the way, they formed this idea that maybe, being an artist was not a path that they should take or take seriously, or they just were told that they weren't creative, or they stopped expressing themselves either sexually or creatively, and that life force energy got stuck inside them. So, going into these Tantra practices, or even going into just a breathing exercises, breathing fully, diaphragmatic belly breathing, it starts to circulate that life force energy, and it starts to connect you back into your body. And that's the biggest thing about Tantra, and something that in activating your genius I highly recommend is exploring a Tantra workshop. That's what I did this week. Or reading about it, or just learning more about all the ways that Tantra can be manifested, because it is coming back home to yourself. That's what Tantra really is. It's surrendering to the unknown, to the abyss. It's having so much trust and faith that allows your heart to stay fully open, and that life force energy to experience all of the orgasmic pleasures of life. So, the more refined your energy becomes, the more you sense this energy and this vitality moving through you. And you just keep having more good fortune manifesting and aligning with people and places and things that will bring you more rapture, more joy. So when life currents begin to move through the chambers of your heart and your chest, this devotional energy gets activated. It is the essence of Tantra, or the spontaneous surrender of your higher being to its highest evolution. So when a lot of times in these genes we talk about yoga, and I think yoga is a great place to start as far as getting your mind, body, spirit connection aligned. You know, a lot of us experience events that disconnect us, and we go through these disassociations. And yoga is this amazing practice of reintegrating our mind and our heart and our soul back into our body. But once we've got that under our belt, once we have fully rooted back into our body, the next beautiful place to go and path to go is the Tantra way. And that is, instead of a structured process of connecting with your body, it's truly just allowing that life force energy to move you in all directions. So you abandon the structure, you abandon the discipline, and you surrender in this deep, deep way. So so Tantra is all about letting this life force energy take you wherever it wants to go. And such paths often lead to a lot of societal judgments, because especially given the sexual energy that's inherent to this gene, people have an idea of how a relationship should look, what sex should look like, and how it should be used and when it should be used. And this archetype of this abysmal is just this beautiful, deep surrender for diving into the deepest chambers of your heart and operating your life from that place, living entirely from your heart. Now, there is a quote that Richard Rudd says that I think is a great way to wrap up this 29th Siddhi of devotion, and it says, "This is an absolutely contagious Siddhi. Wherever it goes, it inspires devotions in others. This electrical, almost sexual aura creates considerable waves when it appears in the world. These are masters who care nothing for morality or taboos. They are only interested in one thing: surrender into the heart. When it first pours into you, this 29th Siddhi often appears to be a chaotic energy without structure or rhythm. Can confirm. As your devotion deepens, you adjust your inner being to the organic nature of your heart, which knows no rules and takes its own strange twists and turns. What appears to be chaos to the outsider is really a deep state of wild, harmonic transcendence in which the boundaries of normal reality have utterly melted. This is the Siddhi of saying yes to life. It gives itself to absolutely anything and anyone that comes its way. The message of this 29th Siddhi is exactly this: trust your heart above all else and never worry about the consequences. To be devoted means to lie forever in the lap of the divine." I love that so much. So this week in Activating Your Genius, I really invite you to look back through your relationships and notice if you have experienced a lot of cycles within them and some repeating behaviors, and take responsibility for how you showed up in those relationships. I know this stuff is really hard to work through, so be gentle and compassionate for yourself as you do, but you're going to keep repeating the same cycle unless you pick up the lesson. And this week, I invite you to see the lesson so you don't have to struggle and learn it again in a different way from a different person. If you acknowledge it, you honor it, and you surrender to it, then life can present you with a new experience from a heightened frequency. So when you look at your responsibilities, are you someone who overcommits? Are you someone who undercommits? Are you someone that stays in a relationship far longer than you should? All of the signs are there, the writing's on the wall, the person is not invested in this relationship along with you, and you're trying to control the outcome, or you're afraid of the unknown on what it looks like to break up, so you just stay with it. Can you notice those patterns behind you? Or if you jump ship at the first problem, Is that the repeating cycle that you carry into all your relationships? Is this lack of commitment, this fear of commitment? So I just gracefully invite you to acknowledge your relationships, and maybe it's your relationship to self, maybe it's your relationship to family, to friends, to your job, to people at work. And if you have the opportunity to experience a Tantra workshop, I definitely encourage you to do that. But more than anything this week, I just invite you to live from your heart, operate from your heart, move in the direction where your heart leads you, and feel that trust that you can't make any mistakes. And that's what we learned last week with the Gene Key 30 is it's impossible for you to make the wrong move. You are going to learn from every single experience. Everything is going to lead you to an eventual growth, evolution, and ascension. But you just have to stop and be mindful and show up and notice the patterns and notice how you're showing up for everyone, and the decisions that you're making. Are they operating from a logical place in your mind, or are they operating from the wildness of your heart? And can you allow yourself to operate more from the wildness of your heart? If it is not a hell yes, it is a no. Thank you so much for being here this week. I really appreciate you. I feel like this practice right here for me in studying the Gene Keys, this is something that I'm rapturous and deeply devoted to. At this point, I don't even know how many videos I've had and how many weeks I've explored with you, but it's really fun for me, especially because this is my second go around with them. But I'm exploring them and I'm teaching them in this new way with y'all that takes it outside of my introspective work and adds this other element of showing you how it shows up in my life, I talked about the Costa Rica spiritual retreat. That was a big way that it showed up in my life. Also, I had some grief this week that showed up in my life when I was acknowledging the passing of one of my friends. And I brought it up in the video last week, and I didn't even remember the date of her passing, but she's been so heavy on my brain and in my heart, and I know now why, even more so than having traveled to Boynton Beach where we lived together. But this was the week that was in the anniversary of her passing, and I had to honor the fact that was the end of a cycle. Grief is this longing of the heart to hold on to these people, places, and things. And when we feel like they're gone, they've died, we mourn the loss, we mourn that longing of our heart. And it's important for us to just acknowledge that our human life is a cycle, and it will come to an end as we know it in its physical form. But because we're made of matter, matter can neither be created nor destroyed, so it will take a new form. So my friend has been with me all week, showing up in all of these miraculous ways, and it just reminds me that while that human cycle ended, she is now embarking on a different cycle, and I can still pay witness and be an observer to that, and devoted to surrendering to the grief that I felt, allowing myself to feel all the feelings of that grief, allow myself to feel the feelings of all of the other grief that stemmed in this week, and also, being in this new formed relationship with someone, and going to this Tantra workshop was a really fun way to connect with someone that's new in my life, and also to know that our commitment to one another is the commitment of non-attachment. And that means that whether this relationship is a month, 6 months, a year, or a lifetime, we will both decide to let it go through its natural rhythm and complete its cycle, and learn all of the things along the way, and become better people for it. There's a reason that we were vibrating on the same frequency, that we entered one another's lives. So let's grow together. Let's learn together. Let's rewrite some old scripts together. Let's go on adventures and explore one another in all these fun and creative, higher conscious ways. So I love the way these genes show up in my life every week. And I'm so devoted to living with this commitment to non-attachment and seeing all the miraculous ways it shows up in my life and provides me with all of this good fortune. So I hope the same for you. I hope that you're experiencing that. I hope that you can tell me about it. I love hearing from you. So thank you again for being here. If you like this video, make sure to give it a like, share it with your friends, comment in the comment field. And I look forward to checking out all of your feedback and exploring next week's gene with you. I will see you soon. Namaste.